As a content warning, this episode contains discussion of suicide. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to Mom and Dad Are Fighting, Slate's parenting podcast for Thursday, August 17th, the Should We Tell 'Em edition. I'm Zak Rosen. I make another podcast that's called The Best Advice Show, and I'm dad to Noah, who is almost 6, and Ami, who's almost 3. We live in Detroit.
I'm Jamilah Lemieux, a writer, contributor to Slate's Care and Feeding Parenting column, and mom to Naima, who's 10, and we live in Los Angeles.
I'm Elizabeth Newcamp. I write the homeschool and family travel blog Dutch Goose. I'm the mom of 3 littles, Henry, who's 11, Oliver, who's 9, and Teddy, who's 6, and we live in Tokyo, Japan.
Have you ever said that before?
No.
What does that feel like?
It's so weird.
We can't wait to hear more about your adventures, which we will get into in Triumphs and Fails. After that, when should you tell your kids about hard things? Is there a good way to bring up things that they don't encounter personally, but need to know about? When there's so much to talk about, what should you prioritize? We've got thoughts. Finally, if you're in the Slate Plus Club, we are going to hear about the whimsical, unique playgrounds Elizabeth and co. have encountered on their international travels. Here's what you'll hear if you have Slate Plus.
We bought our ticket, and this man came up and spoke to us in Japanese. Very nice. We thought he was helping us. I now think that he was like, hi, the park closes, in an hour. And we were like, great. 3 children and 2 adults, And then I think as we were walking through the gate, he was like enthusiastically yelling at us. I like to believe he was like, well, you can use your ticket tomorrow,
As a Slate Plus member, you'll get a whole bonus segment every week and all your favorite Slate podcasts ad-free. It's truly the best way to listen and the best way to support this show. You can sign up for Slate Plus now at slate.com/momanddadplus. All right, we're going to do Triumphs and Fails in a second. We'll be right back. This episode is brought to you by KiwiCo. I have a very distinct memory from when I was 7 years old. My mom left me home alone for the first time. It was probably just for like 20 minutes, but she left me with this geology kit that came with a little pick and a big slab of clay that had like stones inside that I had to dig out. I love that activity. I can imagine doing it right now. And it reminds me of what KiwiCo is doing. KiwiCo is defining the future of play by making it engaging, enriching, and seriously fun. They create super cool hands-on projects designed to create a lifelong love for learning among kids. I recently did a project with Noah, my almost 6-year-old. It is part of the astronaut starter kit. We painted a set of model planets and then constructed a miniature solar system that actually spins. It is very cool. Redefine learning with play. Explore hands-on projects that build creative confidence and problem-solving skills with KiwiCo. Get 50% off your first month, plus free shipping on any crate line at kiwico.com/momanddad. That's 50% off your first month at kiwico.com/momanddad.
This is a weird segue, but have you ever bailed on a party because you're so bloated that you'd have to wear sweatpants to go out? Well, Ritual created Symbiotic Plus with that weird gut stuff in mind. It contains clinically studied prebiotics, probiotics, and a postbiotic to support a balanced gut microbiome. Jeff and I have both been taking this Symbiotic Plus as we've been traveling. It has this wonderful pepperminty smell to it. I feel like the bottle is just telling me this is going to help your tummy. But I'm always kind of worried about digestive issues and feeling bloated as we're eating different foods. And I've been taking this to kind of ward any of that off and just kind of really enjoyed adding this to my morning. I'm not even joking that I really love the peppermint smell. Symbiotic Plus and Ritual are here to celebrate, not hide your insides. There's no more shame in your gut game. That's why Ritual is offering Mom and Dad listeners 30% off during your first month. Visit ritual.com/momanddad to start Ritual and add Symbiotic Plus to your subscription today.
So Elizabeth, where to begin?
I know.
You're in a hotel, you're in Japan. What is going on?
Okay, so I am going to wrap all of this up into this nice little story about Teddy and a big triumph he has, just to kind of illustrate how things are going and how I think in general the kids are like really overcoming and meeting some of these challenges. So we, of course, took some time to travel on the way out here, joined Jeff in a conference. And when we got here, we're lucky in that the landing in Japan was sort of soft because since we are in the military, we landed in Tokyo and then got taken to a base that is like an hour and a half or so outside of the city. And we're staying at like a very nice, they call it TLF, temporary living facility, which is kind of like a little house. This was in a tower, like an apartment. So a nice soft landing there. And while we were there, they have these two huge pools on base. One is outdoors and has this high diving board, and the other is an indoor natatorium that has this amazing climbing wall that you climb into the water. So we were really looking forward to the pool. My kids are pretty good swimmers, but in order to use these fun swimmy accessories, you have to pass this swim test. And of course, Henry does diving as his sport, so I wasn't worried about him. And Oliver had done the swim test, like swimming instruction in the Netherlands and then in Florida. But Teddy, we've always taken him swimming, but we have never done formal instruction with him. He's a good swimmer, but he's kind of small for 6. And so I just really wasn't sure. We have been to places like the YMCA before where you have to take a swim test to use the deep end of the pool. And he has just categorically never been interested. I do not want to take this swim test. I do not want to have any part of this. I will just hang out with mom and dad. But when we got to this pool, he was so into this diving board and this climbing wall that he is I'm taking this swim test.
Hell yeah.
So we're like, okay, great. This will be fine. The swim test included jumping in the water without goggles. You have to have your head submerged, come out, tread water for a full minute, and then pull yourself out of the pool and then swim a full length in a stroke. We had 10 minutes before the lifeguard break when they were going to do the test. I was like, here's how you tread water. He's like, okay, I'm going to take this. And I said to him, listen, you might not pass this test. And that is totally fine. If you don't pass it, we will work on it. And you will definitely pass it before we leave here. And then every time we come back to do anything on base, you'll be able to use these pools. And he was pretty cool with that. He was like, okay, but I want to try. I was like, okay, great. So lifeguard break comes, his brothers jump in, he jumps in, and when he's treading water, he keeps putting his head back because he learned to rescue, do a rescue float. And so his instinct when he gets tired is to go on his back. But of course they want you to actively tread water. So we're shouting at him, get your head up, get your head up. And I'm thinking please let these teens realize that he is fine. He is not going to drown. He's a great swimmer. We've been swimming in the ocean all summer. He somehow manages to do this despite us yelling, get your head up. And I don't think he's ever treaded water like this, and climbs out. But he is so winded that I'm like, oh my gosh, he is not going to be able to swim this lap. So he jumps in to swim the lap. His brothers actually go first, which was good. And as he is swimming this lap, the lifeguard is is walking next to him, with the buoy, clearly this kid isn't going to make it. And somehow he makes it to the other end and gets his little swim card. So just to say that we are kind of fighting tooth and nail to get each thing done. And the kids have just been, every moment that we think it's sort of oh, this isn't going to work out, we sort of pull it out at the end. So, yeah.
That's such a fierce moment for him.
Oh, my gosh. It was
amazing.
Amazing, because he never wants to try stuff like that. And, of course, the lifeguards made him feel so good. They were 6 is the youngest that they've had. He is not the youngest, but 6 is the youngest they've had in the book. And he's 6. So, the lifeguard was like, oh, you're one of the youngest in the book. And he's so excited. Every time he climbs to the top of the high dive, the lifeguard will look and ask to show his bracelet, sort of I can't believe you would have a bracelet. And he's so excited to raise his arm. And yeah, I do.
That's amazing.
But
congratulations.
Thanks. What has been up with you guys?
Well, I just came back from 2 weeks in New York, child-free.
Oh, my gosh.
It was great. I got to see my friends. I got to see my sister. Just had a really good time. Very bittersweet because I hurt very badly for not living in New York anymore. Leaving was the biggest mistake I've ever made. But it was good. Pending triumph or fail, I went to Cookies, which was my favorite children's clothing store in New York. It's massive, very specialized in uniforms. They have other clothes too. And they've got clothes for babies and big kids, and it's huge. Nice. And I went and I bought Naima a box of school clothes and shipped it back here. So today's going to be our first day seeing each other since I've been back. And we'll see if I succeeded because I don't have the touch I once had when it came to picking out clothes for Naima. She's become a lot more independent. She's very serious about her clothing. So I'm hoping I got things that she'll like.
I mean, do you think she'll appreciate it?
She'll be grateful, but she will be like, if I don't like this, I don't want to wear it.
Yeah, totally. Do you have plans to go back to New York anytime soon?
Not yet.
You know how much you miss it?
I'm trying to figure out, I don't know what it is, but I need to find some sort of professional opportunity that brings me out there every 4 to 6 weeks. Like I need a little gig in New York. So we'll see. I'm trying to figure some things out.
It's hard to go back to those places that like you could see yourself having a life. I feel that every time we spend time in Atlanta, like just the heartache of like, oh, what if we had just stayed here?
Yeah.
Like, even though it's not reality, right? And we made choices for all these reasons, but it does there's a lot of like what ifs and ability to be like, like revamping your life in your head.
Yeah.
Which is, dangerous is not the right word, but sometimes it does feel really hurtful because you don't know how things would have been. I always remind myself like this would have changed so much that it's hard for me to predict what that would look like. But I every time I fly away from Atlanta, I feel that kind of like heartache. Like, oh.
Yeah.
So I feel you. It's tough.
Zach, what about you?
Well, I think Noah is pretty well out of. She's. I think I can safely say she's entirely out of wanting to hear kid songs. Nope, that's not true. She still asks for Alvin and the Chipmunks on occasion. But like we're pretty much out of the phase of, Baby Shark, and she's now interested in, big anthemic pop songs like Party in the USA. We've listened to 50 times this week.
Oh, no.
Vanessa Carlton's 1,000 Miles, like any of these songs that like are great at first, but not after a million times. But regardless, I'm grateful to be here rather than ABCs. Though Ami is in that phase. So regardless, Noah has just taken a keen interest in singing and performing in the past, and now just in the last like couple days, actually, she seems really interested in writing songs. So she's like freestyled a bit in the past, but now she's just like in the car at home, just like asking me to like, what should I sing about? And then we give her a subject, trees, your friends, your breakfast, love. And she'll just like sing like a ballad, like a really expressive song it's just the greatest thing. And last night, instead of having her TV time, she asked instead if we could work on recording some songs in my studio where I record, my podcast stuff, including this show right now. And so I was like, yeah, it was like the greatest request ever. It's like a professional baseball player, his son asking like if they can have a catch. Like I'm not a professional songwriter, but I can record things. So it's like, I am so excited to be in the studio now. Last night was the first time. She's recording. She'll let me play guitar a little bit. We're listening back to it. We're starting to listen to songs now. And I was explaining to her yesterday the difference between verses and choruses and how like most pop songs basically have those two things. And so now she's like listening to songs with a kind of interest in structure in a new way. And so I'm trying not to put any pressure on her. I'm not, but what a joy just to like watch her discover this new interest.
So cool. Have you let her play around at all? I wonder if she'd like playing around with like GarageBand or something too, I'm sure you have.
Yeah, no. I mean, so this started yesterday, but yeah. I'm going to be very interested in how it develops, and I'll definitely encourage her.
My parents
GarageBand is a good idea.
Like one of those old school recorders and gave it to the kids, and they just like loved that too.
Like a cassette recorder?
Like it was
That's a good
digital
idea.
recorder, but old,
but just basic, yeah.
Basic.
Right.
And they would record other stuff, but I wonder if something like that too that she could carry around and kind of keep little
Yeah.
You know, she might just find that fun. I'm not saying any of this will lead anywhere, but it's like when kids get into this, I love to just like indulge and make this super fun. And the same thing with GarageBand. My kids just really enjoyed playing around with like how you can loop it and just add in crazy instruments doing things.
Right.
Like more like a game than anything else. But
yeah,
those might be some fun things. I was going to ask when you started, like, are you recording her? Because if this phase, like she goes out of this phase and then doesn't want to sing again, I find like the audio recordings of the kids to be in some ways
totally
even more precious than the video recordings. It just really makes you focus on their voices. I don't know.
Totally. Yes. I'm recording as much as I can. And in fact, Ami's home sick right now. And Shira and I were just trying to get him to take a nap. And he asked for the Owl song, which is the song Noah recorded the other night. So now he's just listening to that as he goes to sleep.
That is amazing.
Maybe we can hear the Owl song right now. Here's the Owl song.
Ooh, the owl is my friend. I love you the merriest. I need if you are not. I wanna be found.
On that note, we're going to take another quick break. See you back here for our listener question.
From the middle of dark, I am not. Oh, I need a mountain to live in for the rest of my life.
This episode is brought to you by EveryPlate. Looking to budget your food expenses for the back-to-school season? Get more bang for your bite with America's best value meal kit. EveryPlate is 25% cheaper than grocery shopping, with no hidden fees, so you can count on great value week after week. Plus, only pay for what you need with pre-portioned ingredients. Cook once, eat twice with our new dinner to lunch dishes, tasty filling meals for both dinner and lunch the next day. Each recipe is carefully crafted to ensure the ingredients can be easily repurposed, so you won't feel like you're just eating leftovers. Plus, save some time making lunch on busy weekdays, with most of the work done at dinner. Their meals are 50% cheaper than your average fast casual meal. They're the easiest way to eat affordably. I just left my kitchen where I made my family the charred vegetable zucchini and tomato melts. It was so good. It's like a grilled cheese, but much, much better. I really liked this meal. So did my family. Get $1.49 per meal by going to everyplate.com/podcast and entering code 49momandDad. That's $1.49 per meal by going to everyplate.com/podcast and entering 49momandDad. That's up to a $110 value. All right, we're back. Let's hear today's listener question, which was posted to the Slate Parenting Facebook group.
I was thinking about a recent episode of Mom and Dad Are Fighting. The guest host, Lucy Lopez, talked about a family member saying Lucy shouldn't tell her kids about racist experiences. She said, in summary, I have to tell them this is the truth about how the world is. That led me to think, how do we make the choices about which truths to share with our kids and when? I know the answer isn't only to address the things my kids personally encounter, because that leaves a myopic and limited view of the world. But there are so many difficult things that are true. Racism, cancer, divorce, war, death of children, etc. How do you make decisions about which things to bring up with your kids before they encounter them in the wild? Which things do you not bring up until they affect your kid?
Jamilah, what do you think?
So my daughter being 10, she encounters a lot in the wild. And oftentimes we have conversations based on things that she's heard something about. You know, she's caught a news story. I remember one story that impacted her really profoundly last year was the suicide of this young woman. I can't think of her name, but she'd been like a pageant queen. She, I think, left her family a warning and jumped off the side of a building. You know, and that was really difficult for Naima to hear about it. She had a lot of questions about why someone would do something like that. Things like that I wouldn't necessarily bring to her, but there are things I want her to know about how the world works. I talked to her about the shooting of Megan Thee Stallion. I felt like that was important to know. It was a big news story, and, you know, it was a way for us to have a conversation about misogyny and misogynoir and how Black women are treated. You know,
Do you remember what you said?
Well, that this person who had been her friend and she got into an argument and he shot her. And he's been lying about it. And now there are all these people saying all these awful things about her online, and they don't believe her. And part of the reason they don't believe her is because she's a black woman, you know, and oftentimes when we're victims of violence, particularly violence at the hands of black men, people don't believe us. Yeah. They don't want to believe us, you know. And we talked extensively about that. I think it's really about knowing what your child can handle. I don't make it a point of always talking to Naima about school shootings unless I think she's heard about them. You know, I know that can create anxiety in her. I want her to feel safe in her classroom. And so I don't want her constantly thinking about domestic terrorism, you know, but since it has come on her radar, she's, you know, we have discussed it at some point, you know, she is aware that it happens, but it's not something that I would bring to her. I think you want to bring things to your child that they can handle and focus on, you know, the things that they need to know. Like, what are the things that are going to impact their experience? You know, like you have to talk to kids about racism. You have to talk to them about sexism because these are things they're going to encounter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I am interested by this letter writer saying, like, how do you talk about the things that you don't encounter? Because I guess that if you are out in the world, you see so many of these things, even when they're not happening to you. Mm-hmm. And so I think, like, from a young age, you can really start telling your kids a lot of these things, even just to plant the seed of kind of how the world works. I think kids ask a lot. You know, I'm just thinking like the amount of times we've talked about things like racism, classism, because we're driving through some place or we're walking through a city and we see someone who is homeless and the kids ask, right, questions. And it's like, well, this is a great opportunity to talk about poverty. This is a great opportunity to talk about mental health and racial disparities. Like, this is an opportunity for me to inform the kids that the world is not this cheery place, but we can do it in a really safe way because they don't feel threatened or, harmed or scared at that moment. Like, a lot of times when we have these conversations in the light of something that has happened, it takes on this very panicked, that fight or flight. Having the conversation there, I always think is like, this isn't a great conversation. My job in this moment as the parent is to make my kid feel safe. But my job kind of the rest of the time when they feel safe is to be like, listen, the world is really complicated. And I need you to know that. And I do think what has happened is that by having a lot of these little conversations and making sure that, like, the books that we read are bringing these up. Like, I feel like the books I get from the library and the books I try to introduce the kids to, I try to make sure that they're also covering these topics, even if they're things that we've never talked about or they've never encountered or never seen, because that's a great opportunity to talk about it and a jumping off point for when the kids see something and have a question like, hey, remember in this book, this happened. Oh, yeah. And then I can say, like, okay, why are they bringing this up? Like, what about that do we need to help kind of process? Because I think what happens is that if you aren't kind of always talking about this, one, you make the topics taboo and then it is uncomfortable to talk about, versus saying, like, there are uncomfortable things that happen in the world and I want you to know that I'm here to explain it. And I'm here to kind of help you through it. And the world isn't always fair, right? We're going to be dealing with these things. And what can we do to make things better when we can? We can't always, and that's uncomfortable. I also, if you have kids that are starting, and I even think like my 6-year-old can listen to this, there's a podcast called The 10 News, and it really just breaks down the news to 10 little things that are happening. They are not always good things. They certainly make things, it's upbeat. They make things not scary, but they do kind of bring these things up, and we listen to that. We used to listen to it in the car. We'll see where we listen to it here. But a nice way to kind of to bring up those things that are happening, and sometimes things like school shootings and things are on there, and a great time to sort of say, hey, these things do happen in the world, and do you have questions? Here's something I can explain to you. But I think that it's sort of your job not to shelter your kids and to be making sure that if they are not encountering these things, that you are at the very least talking about them.
Yeah. What you just said, Liz, reminded me of something that someone commented to this question on Facebook. Like I said, this is from the Slate Parenting Facebook group, which you can totally join if you're not a member already. Just search Slate Parenting, because there's really good responses to any question that's posed there, and we just kind of scratched the surface. But I wanted to read a couple answers because both of them I think are really wise. Listener Lisa said, "My kid carpooled with me from the age of 7 months, and I listened to the news, so they heard just about everything. I did occasionally turn it off when the commentator gave a content warning. Now they're 15 and both a pretty savvy consumer of media and a well-informed citizen of the world, so I guess I err on the side of sharing a lot so we can discuss it." And then Laura wrote, "I tend to answer specifically what he's asking and then ask him open-ended questions to see how he thinks about something or what his ideas already are. Usually saves me from oversharing accidentally. A few tough ones I've also said to him that I can't answer for him right now because I need to think about how to explain it properly. It buys me time to think through how I want to answer, chat with my husband, friend, family about it, to spitball ideas, and then get back to him." I love both of these.
I thought that last one,
lot.
sorry, Zach, that last one is such a good point, because I think sometimes as parents, we feel like when our kids come to us that we need to have all the answers. And on these topics, like 9 times out of the 10, I don't have all the answers. I am kind of, woefully unprepared for the conversation and uneducated on the conversation. And I think it is okay to say, like, hey, we need to look more into this, particularly as the kids get older and ask really good questions. I think as parents, it's okay for us to be like, that's such a great observation, and I actually don't know.
Zach, you've got little kids. What sort of ugly stuff have you felt the need to talk to them about?
Yeah, I mean, Noah and I have conversations about, and her mom, we all talk a lot about, I mean, death, sex, poverty. We live in Detroit, and so we see people struggling all the time, so that you can't ignore that, literally. Ami's 3 hasn't noticed much, but no, we tend to be as open as we can with Noah. And it strikes me as another Facebook post spoke about, they write, "I think it depends on the temperament of the kid. My oldest watches the news with me and asks about things. It doesn't keep him up at night. Some family members' kids have nightmares if they know too much," which is an interesting point. I mean, Noah doesn't seem to be affected to the point where it's giving her anxiety. But I wonder if that is, I mean, that must be the case for some kids who maybe are so sensitive, it's hard for them to hear. But I don't know, maybe by telling them that's like the only, because I don't know.
Well, I think your approach might differ, but I'm going to tell you that you're not going to long-term help their anxiety by pretending it doesn't exist, because these things are how the world works, and we can't not talk about them. Like, I often think, like, how much of the problems we're seeing now are a result of, like, a generation of let's not talk about it because it's not a problem for me, versus, like, being able to say, hey, I know you might not experience, but this is happening, and you need to know it's happening, because once you know it's happening, you'll see that you are experiencing it. Particularly with things like racism, right? Like, you just are on the better end of what's happening. And you need to know that going forward. And even if that makes you uncomfortable, then let's talk about why it makes you uncomfortable. I guess I just don't see for any child. Now, the level, certainly, right? Like, when we come talk about violence, I have one that is very nervous about gun violence in particular. And so that's Oliver. And so for Oliver, I don't want him to be scared. I want him to know it's happening, and I want him to know the things we do to keep him safe, and the things that, the country needs to do, and what we personally are doing. So I may shield him from, like, descriptive details of things that have happened, but I don't think I'm helping him by making him think that it just doesn't happen in this world.
100%. This is a great topic, and it's a topic that is going to come up again and again, and one that we really appreciate your feedback on. So if you want to read what other listeners had to say or comment yourself, head over to the Slate Parenting Facebook group. Join us. It's an amazing community. Also, if you or anyone you know are in crisis, you can now contact the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline anytime. Just dial 988 or visit 988lifeline.org. And that's our show. Please subscribe, leave a rating and review, and tell your friends. If you have a question or topic you want to address, email us at momanddad@slate.com or leave us a voicemail at 646-357-9318. This episode of Mom and Dad Are Fighting is produced by Rosemary Belson and Maura Curry. Shasha Leonard is the voice of our listeners. Alicia Montgomery is VP of Slate Audio. For Elizabeth Newcamp and Jamilah Lemieux, I'm Zak Rosen. Thank you so much for listening.